You are now listening to the Serious Growth Podcast with your host, Leo Costa Jr.
Welcome to Serious Growth Podcast, where the truth is told. On today's show, we have Alondra Chatman. Alondra, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'm doing pretty good for somebody my age. You know, I'm getting up there now. I'm like going to be 65 here pretty soon.
65 years young.
Yeah, right. Okay, we'll go with that. No, actually, I'm actually pretty lucky because, and I think it's because of training. For my age, I'm doing pretty good. But yeah, it definitely helps. I've seen it over the years. I see other people that have come to my gym because I've been in a training studio, my own training studios now for 38 years.
Awesome.
So the benefit, and I'm sure that you're seeing that too, is when people exercise and do something consistently like that and improve their body, which improves their overall being, it definitely makes a difference, you know?
Absolutely.
I told you before the show started, you know, I look at your bio here, it's insane. And I would say that without seeing you, that you definitely have passion for what you do.
Yes, for sure.
So my question for you, I always like knowing how people get to, you know, a certain spot where you started. It was through athletics in school.
Yes.
And you just kept transitioning. And I'm really, how did you get into sports to begin with? Do you have like a family member, or how did all that happen with you?
Yeah, so both my parents were athletic. So growing up, I watched my dad play basketball. He literally played basketball until his hip would not allow that, and that was just a few years ago. So athletic, watching my parents grow up, you know, I definitely saw them continue to be athletic through their years, and definitely played a big role on me starting in elementary school. I started with basketball and volleyball in elementary, and just kind of continued to grow into other sports and track, dancing, and that went right into a profession and a career of personal training and bodybuilding.
Yeah, it sounds like it was sort of a natural. That kind of happened with me too. But interestingly enough, you kind of followed because you went to basketball. Who played volleyball, your mom or your dad?
My mom.
Your mom. So you basically followed the sports that they were in.
Yes.
Sounds
definitely.
like. And then you went off a little bit. And when you first got into the world of personal training is when you met your coach.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, is he still coaching you to this day?
No. So that was 1998 or so, somewhere in there, where I kind of transitioned from kind of doing my own thing to actually training specifically for a show. And that was new to me until 1998. I saw a friend. She did a contest, and I said, hey, you know, I think I can do that too. Let me do what it takes to learn what this whole new world is all about. And that was my introduction into bodybuilding.
Okay. What was your first show that you competed in?
The Silver and Black in 2010.
Was that
was here in Oakland?
Oakland, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was your very first one?
Yes.
And you competed in physique, is that right?
Figure,
okay.
yes.
So figure, just for the people that are listening, that's a different, okay, figure, I first have to preface this by saying when I was coming through the sport, there weren't all these different categories with figure, bikini, and all those. It was bodybuilding, and men and women both did that. And so this was unusual for me when I came back, because I took a layoff of about 13 or 14 years. So when I came back, I was kind of in shock because, I mean, board competitions for men. So the figure, that's I'm going to say that's in between like bikini and physique.
Correct. So a step up in muscularity and leanness from bikini.
Yeah. Now, I saw that you had one of your photos that I pulled up this morning before we started this. It was like a 4-year transformation that was pretty darn significant. And do you know what I'm talking about? like before your first competition that you did?
The very first transformation was actually only about 5 months. So I started off with being just kind of a fit athlete. When I opened my gym, I focused so much of my time and energy on my clients and running this gym that I didn't focus enough attention on myself. Once I had the time and the energy to put toward actually getting on stage, that was about a 5-month transformation to that first show. And was that? No, that was May of 2010.
Okay. Now, how long ago did you open your gym?
This will be 14 years in April.
Oh, you've been around for
2006. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get into that? I mean, that's pretty big jump to get into your own business.
Yeah.
Did you have any kind of experience in being in any kind of a business, or was that your first one?
This is absolutely my first business. My first and only job outside of school was at Visa. So I worked at Visa, and, business is kind of business wherever you go. There's different flavors, but running a business and being in business is kind of, you can take it and roll with it wherever you go. So I did get a good background in business. I have a degree in biology, kind of brought that together and stepped out of corporate and worked into my own facility. Very small gym when I first started. I was by myself, only trainer, doing a few classes and personal training clients, and then got more business, couple more trainers in, took a wall out, and in 2014, I came into the space I'm in now, which is a 5,000 square foot training floor. Amongst other things, we have here my tanning business. We do meal prep. My husband's a photographer, so he has a studio in back. So we do a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so from my small little facility to where we are now, we've had a lot of growth and transition there.
Yeah, huge. I've always kept my facility small, but it makes sense if you can pull it off to have all these different streams of revenue that it sounds like you have inside your facility.
Yeah, definitely.
When you started, then the timeline was you didn't start bodybuilding first and then open a gym, or was that how it went? You got into bodybuilding?
No, opened the gym in 2006.
Okay.
Did a couple years of training, and then my first show I started training in 2009, and first show was 2010.
Okay, so when you opened up your gym, then were you immediately doing personal training, or was it more open gym, or
kind of a combination of personal training and group fitness? So
okay.
Definitely not an open gym. I've never done that. It's more of a training facility.
Yeah. And as far as you with your clientele, I know you said that you want to be a walking billboard, and from your photos that I've seen, that certainly is the case. There's nothing better, I think, than leading from the front and by example, and
Absolutely.
that always gives a certain amount of legitimacy as to what you're talking about. But how did you learn about training? I know you're on your bio, you have something here for sports specific training, but how did you apply this? Because that was pretty new. I mean, once you started your bodybuilding, you started training clients, it was all kind of pretty, kind of soon. How did you have that much information to be able to start training clients?
So I worked under my old coach for a few years before I actually opened my own facility. So I've been training with him and training other clients under his direction for a few years, which was awesome because
I see.
You literally cannot get that kind of knowledge out of a book.
Mm-mm.
And he had actually done track and field Olympic trials, and he had been in his own facility for several years. So I gained a lot of knowledge from him.
Yeah, that's really important because especially when you're dealing with somebody who's trying to get some specific goals and results. So when I come to you as a client, can you walk me through that process as far as, I'm coming to you because I don't know about in your place. My place is, but most of the people that come see me are there for, I call it for fitness, tighten tone, condition of the body, lose some inches, lose some weight. But, I also do work with high level athletes because my background is in sports specific training. So if I'm coming to you as somebody who wants to get into better fit condition, what's that process and what does that look like if I come to you as a client?
Sure. So initially I have folks come in and we talk a little bit about what their goals are, and set up a time where I can actually spend time with them on the floor, assessing what they can do, cannot do, their strengths, their weaknesses. I get a sense of how much weight they would use for certain exercises, how well they move on the floor. One of the things that I'm a big proponent for is doing a very thorough warm-up, and my clients try to skip it every single day, but I refuse to let them train until they've gotten a good warm-up in. Just taking them through that, which sometimes feels like a full workout for someone who hasn't trained in a while, but going through nutrition, going through measurements, body fat and tape measurements, and taking some photos to see what you look like, and then that baseline on the training floor is how we start, basically. Every person in here needs to have a full assessment before we start training them.
Now that you have trainers doing some of your work or most of your work, do you still do that? Do you still do that initial assessment, or have you transferred that to your trainers now?
I absolutely do everything still.
Oh, wow.
I still work with a lot of clients on the floor, so I still am a full-time trainer, which is why I have lots of balls in the air every single day.
Yeah.
But I definitely have taught my trainers to do the same with all of their clients as well. So everybody in here knows how to take measurements, how to measure body fat, how to take a new client through an assessment. So yes, we're all really good at that.
So after I get started on your program, then what is the process behind that? Because, clients, when they come, I'll just give you my own personal experiences. I'm sure that more or less the same because of the human nature. But when somebody comes to me, and because I do the same thing that you do, I'm always fact-finding at the very beginning to make sure that I understand what they want. Sometimes people, what they want and what they actually need, in most cases, at least in the beginning, are two different things. And with that being said, anytime somebody starts a program, they're usually very enthusiastic in most cases, not always, but most cases. So what is if I'm like in a hurry I want this and, in a quick period of time, how do you walk a person through that to keep them in the ball game? Because as you know, once the honeymoon wears off, that newness, that's actually, I think, the time where a personal trainer really earns their keep, because that's when you have to keep a person in the ball game. So how are you going to do that with me? How are you going to prepare me for that? Because I want results fast.
Sure. So one thing I do is keep them accountable. So if you are here with me 3 days a week, my check-in is every Saturday morning, first thing out of bed, after going to the bathroom. Email me your weight so I know exactly if you are working according to the plan that I wrote out for you. We'll do pictures every 2 weeks so we can track your progress. Once people see that they're actually progressing, when they see those side-by-sides, that definitely is a motivation. And if they don't see progress, then we have to address what you're not doing, because there's always something missing. And we talk enough and I finally, crack it out of you, then I'll be able to adjust whatever is needed so that we can keep getting closer to those goals. But it's the motivation I see comes from them seeing progress on paper, with when we're tracking workouts and you can see that you're stronger, that your recovery is better. When you can see in the mirror, the clothes are hanging a little bit different and you can see that progress in those side-by-side photos, that's definitely motivating.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, that's for sure. How many days a week do you want me to come in initially?
Depends on who I'm working with. If we have, well, and the other part to that too is how good are you about doing things on your own, because I always give homework assignments. But initially I usually have people in 2 to 3 times a week. It depends on what program though. If we're working towards the stage, then I may see you 4 to 5 days a week. And that's right from day one. So people that are coming in for contest prep have to be prepared for that. But
Yeah.
generally, one-on-one clients 2 to 3 times a week.
So do you just do one-on-one? I know you do like these groups, but how big are groups, and are you mainly one-on-one then?
No, I actually do more group training than one-on-one training. Because I'm so busy, it's easier for me to get more people in the door and to get more. I also like, just for how this community works in this gym, I like the camaraderie that we get in the group training. So I definitely see people stick to that a little bit more, but it just depends on what people want. But I definitely do more group training than the one-on-one.
So how big are your groups?
Groups are generally 4 clients to a trainer. Because I have so many competitors, I also have a second trainer that helps me in the mornings. We have so many people in that I generally have probably 7 to 8 people in the mornings, sometimes more. But the other thing is we have to have enough equipment, and our eyes only can work so fast for people. So we definitely try to keep the numbers down.
Okay, so if I'm in a group of 4 and there are different goals, or do you try to keep the groups like the goals are pretty much the same? Like, for example, in this group of 4, all these people are here for fitness, as opposed to 1 or 2 of those people being here for more of a bodybuilding routine, not necessarily to compete, but just that, I want to get bigger, put on more muscle. So am I in that same group with that person, those 2 people, or people that are there for fitness? How does that work?
I generally try to group the goals together. So I have a specific group that are clients training specifically for building muscle, getting ready for contest prep. Whatever that goal is a little bit different, and the weights are a little different. The programming is a little bit different than those that are just wanting to either get in shape, maintain their fitness, make sure they get their workouts in. So definitely splitting those groups up based on goals.
Okay, that makes kind of sense to me. What's your stance on how many times a week do you train body parts? For example, is it different than the person that's doing bodybuilding, for example, versus the person doing fitness? Over the years, and things will continue to change. I've been around since when I started, it was like the 80s, late 80s. And so I've seen there's been a lot of changes in the industry. And then there's a lot of stuff has come back again, it comes back. So generally, how many times a week do you work body parts, for example, for the people that are fitness versus the people that are bodybuilding?
So again, it kind of depends on if I'm doing one-on-one. I definitely have to take it based on where you are starting and what those goals are. If we're looking at my groups that are training for just fitness, I typically will have them train 1 to 2 body parts each day, and differing over the days of the week. In the bodybuilding, they will be training body parts at least twice a week. If we have a concentration on a certain body part, I need you to build up your glutes a little more. I need you to work on your shoulders a little more. They'll have a supplemental in addition to what we do in our groups to address their parts that we need to bring up. So they may hit that body part 3 times a week instead of just 2.
Yeah. Do you have are you of that mindset that you need a day or 2 days or 3 days rest in between each body part?
The way it's structured, we definitely get a day of rest at least between sessions on the same body part.
Okay. And then how long are my training sessions, as far as how long am I going to spend on weight training?
The way I want them to do it sometimes differs from how long it takes them. But my workouts are usually 45 minutes to an hour. Leg day may go a little bit longer, maybe an hour 15 or so. But it generally is roughly 45 to 60 minutes.
Okay. And that's for both the fitness group and bodybuilding? Yes. Okay. And what about what's your opinion and stance on cardio?
So it's funny because before I actually started bodybuilding, I did not do just cardio. That was never something that I would go to the gym and do cardio because I ran track, and every other sport I played, you get what you need in whatever your training regimen was for the day. So being on a treadmill or elliptical was totally foreign to me until I started actually doing that as part of my regimen. So now my cardio, just because of the athlete that I am, is I hate treadmills. I hate, ellipticals and just being on there forever. I love to be outside. So I do hit the track as much as I can. That's definitely one of my favorite cardio options. And then when I'm inside, I usually will do some sort of hit. So I might incorporate a sprint on the treadmill, kettlebell swings, medicine ball slams, jump rope, anything that keeps me a little bit more occupied. And that's kind of what I teach my clients as well, so that they're always doing something to keep them engaged. It's never 5 days of just get on the elliptical and ride that thing for an hour. It's that I would die. I have exercise ADD, so I just could not do that every day.
I know it's definitely something that you have to have a certain mindset to do that, because I'm opposite of what you're talking about. I'm that person that I'm concerned about muscle wasting. And for me, and again, there's just a lot of ways to skin a cat. We know that. And the body is amazing how it adapts. But like with me, and when we came through, the bodybuilders were in the 60s. The guys were not doing cardio at all. And of course, then as we progressed, a lot of the guys were just very moderate about doing cardio, being highly aware of the heart rate, because we didn't want our heart rate to go over and your body switch over to an anaerobic state, because your body burns sugar, and we just wanted to burn fat. So it was low impact. So it doesn't sound like you're necessarily concerned about that, unless I'm misreading you.
No, it's definitely a different style of training than most traditional bodybuilders. There is a time and place for that. I definitely do, because of the way my body stores fat. I will do some of the longer, slower cardios, but that definitely is only when I am coming down for a show. You will never catch me doing that on any other day.
Interesting. Even in your off season, huh?
Yeah, I do a little bit of cardio. I try to control my weight by what I eat.
Yeah.
My training style is a little bit different. Like I said, I'm usually more of that person that's doing a HIIT type workout. So that's what my body's used to. It responds really well to that. And the cardios that I would do on plan will include some of that HIIT, but also some of the steady state stuff.
So then when you're dealing with clients, you're taking that into consideration, because I might not be, I don't like to run. I'd rather drive a car or ride a bike, if I had to do the running. But you take all that obviously into consideration, because that's the sign and the mark of a good trainer, is when you're able to, it's like coaching. When you're a coach, if you have this mindset as a coach that it's your way or the highway, you're not going to be as successful as a coach who is willing and interested in adapting to their players. You know where I'm going with that.
Yeah, and everybody is different. Everyone's body responds differently to the programming. So yes, you absolutely have to pay attention to how it's responding and adapt.
Yeah, because if I came to you and you told me you've already addressed this, you're going to make it something that is more adaptable to me. You tell me, this is how you've gotten yourself in shape, but obviously for a group of your people, that's just not going to work. But it sounds like you've addressed that. And again, that's a mark of a really smart trainer. When it comes to your stance on nutrition, generally, what's your strategy?
So I try to encourage people to eat well. And I say that because there are so many different fad diets and different ways of eating now. Every time I look at anything on nutrition, it's about keto, it's about vegan, it's about this, that. So I'm very balanced in how I eat, and I don't discourage people from what they do, but I definitely encourage people to not eliminate any one type of food out of their diets, because it's not, I just don't think that that's necessary. I've done really well with eating carbs all the way up until show day. I don't think you need to eliminate that altogether, but there's a time and place for absolutely everything. But when it comes to just general good nutrition, eliminating all the extra sugars, eliminating the extra starchy carbs, obviously the fast food, making sure you're eating your leafy green veggies, a rainbow of foods on your plate. I'm not, I'm not vegetarian or vegan. I never will be. But making sure that you're eating the right types of proteins, not a bunch of saturated fats and things like that. So I just try to encourage people to be balanced in their nutrition.
So if I'm that person that wants to drop some weight and we're just getting started, are you talking to me anything about caloric intake, or are you just saying, I want you to eat healthier? I'm curious as to.
Yeah, so what I generally do is ask them to do a food journal for 3 to 4 days. Once they bring that to me, I can address, okay, these are the good habits that I see, and these are the things that we need to address. Typically, I'm short on time. I went through the drive-through, and this is, maybe happens 3 or 4 times a week, or I just don't eat during the day and I binge at night, or, whatever the issues are, we'll try to address that. And then if it's necessary for me to go there, then I will have them do somewhat of a detox to kind of get rid of the sugars and the cravings in that way. And then we will address how many calories you should be taking in, that macro breakdown. Sometimes people don't want to see that because it might be just too much for them to count calories, but I will give them a structure. And I typically find that that's easier, is that they have a structure with things to choose from on lists, and that makes it at least easier to plug things in to try to get the diet intact.
Yeah. My facilities have always been based around 3 components. I call them the only components, really. It's resistance training or weight training, cardio, and nutrition. Those are the 3 training components that need to be manipulated throughout a workout. This is my philosophy. And leaving one of those out compromises overall benefit. And what I found over the years, maybe you can share with me how that's happened with you, is that the one component that seems to need more hands-on is actually the weight training, the conditioning with weights. And the one that has the most confusion is the diet, because as you said, there's so many diets on the market. It's very confusing for most people as to which one they should be on. And I agree with you. I call them quick fix diets, like Jenny Craig, Nutrisystems. I'm not saying that they don't have a place in the industry, but they're built to fail because there's no infrastructure. They're user unfriendly. Although I have noticed now with Nutrisystems that they're trying to make it more user friendly for the client. But if you take a look at the stats, the people that go on those diets usually go on, they pay for that diet until they lose the weight, because they really focus on losing the weight. And then once that happens, if you take a look at that stats, most of those people 8 months down the road are in worse shape than when they started. That is not the mark of a great nutrition plan when that happens. And I almost, I'm a skeptic on everything. And I almost think that it's designed that way because I think they know that human nature is such that, when they get in the worst shape they've ever been in, even though they were on this quick fix diet, they're going to come back and do it again.
Sure.
Because people are just like that,
Yeah.
And that's why the industry needs people like you and me that are talking straight. And the truth of the matter is, and you're mentioning that, and what you're telling me is you try to make it as lifestyle and user friendly without it being overwhelming, because that client they won't stick with it. Not most of them, even the person that's there for fitness, let alone the person who thinks they want to compete. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I've had so many conversations over the years with folks about what diet they think works the best, what they should and shouldn't be eating, and those diets that they can actually buy food and ship to them. And I always go back to them with, what if you didn't have access to that and you just had to go to Safeway? What would you buy? I mean, everyone needs to be able to buy whatever they need to eat and have enough knowledge to know how do I feed myself and my kids too? Like
Yeah.
you need to be able to pass on those good habits to your children as well.
Yeah.
I've had clients come to me. My parents never made me eat vegetables when I was a kid, so I just don't eat them. And that's sad because we do use whatever we learned as we were growing up and make decisions as adults, although, you're an adult now. Now let's make some changes, but that's hard to break, especially if
Yeah.
that's how you grew up. So I just try to encourage folks, like, let's make some changes now, make them habits, stick with the hard stuff first. Maybe that detox hurts for a week or two, but at least now we've got a solid baseline to start with, and we can, expand from there.
Yeah. What do you do with people that are diabetic? How do you address that with your nutrition plan?
Yeah, so my mom actually is diabetic, and it's been interesting growing up watching her and seeing what it looks like when the diet is not so good, or you have reactions to something. Growing up, I like I said, my mom having to take insulin shots, and if she had something that was a little off during the day, I've seen her almost in a coma because she didn't have enough sugar in her body, or it was too much. So I've seen those swings high and low. So again, that nutrition component came in a little bit early for me, where you have to eat the right things or look what happens.
Yeah.
So when I have folks that are diabetics now, which I haven't had one in a while, but I definitely ask them to, before training for sure, assess where your blood sugar is, and do you need to eat, do you not? But just making sure that they stay consistent throughout the day is the top priority. Making sure that when you do workouts, you're eating right away to compensate for the exercise that you just did. But still staying on a basic balanced diet is everything for diabetics as well. You still have to eat all the green leafy veggies and all the things that I would recommend to most people, but making sure that you're not going over with the carbs. That's the big thing to be careful of with diabetics, is the carbs.
And when you're talking about the carbs, is there a specific, like a certain amount of grams that you tell them that they should be eating, or what? How does that look?
It depends on the person, how much muscle they have on their body. So that's a very individual thing. But so I wouldn't have one answer unless we're talking about a specific person.
Yeah.
My mom, the way she has right now, she has an insulin pump. So her doctor actually prescribes a certain number of carbs for her to eat, and she logs that into her pump. So it's very specific to the person.
I see. Okay. Well, you've given me somewhat of a idea, how you go about your personal training business. So let's switch back over now to you getting ready for a competition. In your off season, do you bulk up at all? Back in my days, we used to bulk up like crazy. I mean, it was really bad in the beginning. Then as I, progressed, then we learned to stay about, anywhere from 15 to 25 pounds away from the show. So the off season, we never got any heavier than that, or at least for us, it was like we should be able to see the abs to some degree, because if you got too fat. So in your off season, or do you have an off season? Because I've been interviewing a lot of people, especially from the IMBA. When we did the Vegas show, we had a booth there. And so many of those athletes that I've been interviewing, astonishingly for me, they compete like 6-7 times a year. First of all, let me ask you, how many times a year do you compete?
So last year I did 4 shows, and I'm planning 4 for this year as well.
Okay, that's
most
not
of
bad.
them. Yeah, I have other responsibilities, so I can't compete all year long. But my first show will probably be towards the end of July. So this is kind of an off season, but my goal is to kind of stay within 10 pounds of the stage. So that's really where it's a little bit of a downtime as far as letting the nutrition be a little more flexible, but still having to be very conscious of what I'm eating each day. My cardio is not as intense right now, so I'm not doing as many days, as long of sessions each week. My workouts, however, are the same. So I still lift 5 days a week, and my goals are always to improve on what I brought the previous year. So, there's always that moving carrot of, okay, this year or this month, I need to focus on, XYZ to improve on the package I brought the last time.
Yeah, and that's really a hard thing. Most people just really don't get that. I mean, I've had so many over the years. I've had so many athletes want to be actually people who think they want to get up on stage until they face the reality of, oh man, this is going to take a lot of extra work, and not
Oh,
only
yeah.
that, but to work on your weak points, to bring those weak points to continue to get nice, that nice and balanced look on stage. Man, is that fools the average person for sure. They have no idea
Yeah.
the kind of
That's the
mindset.
hardest part of it all.
It is. It's easy to train body parts that respond by just simply walking into the gym. It seems like you have body parts like that. It's like you do nothing for them.
Exactly.
But it's those ones that don't respond that you almost have to threaten them at gunpoint for them to respond. I mean, it's crazy that way, but it's I'm making fun of that, but it's kind of true.
But the great part is seeing it actually pull together after you put in the work. So
exactly.
For me, last year, my goal was to bring my shoulders up and to put a little more shape on my lower half, but tighten it in. And I definitely was able to hit both of those goals. I did the hardest crap ever last year to work on my shoulders. One of my trainers here basically wrote several programs for me for shoulders. And I had to remind him, like, I'm a girl, right? These weights that you have me pushing are like my body weight in a seated military press, but I was able to do it. I was able to be able to push my own body weight overhead. And, it was beyond what I ever thought I would be doing, but it worked. And at the end of the day, it came out as my strongest point.
And to be able to let someone else know that it is really about trusting the process. I mean, having the motivation has to be greater than the obstacle. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And because sometimes I look back now, I mean, I'm not going to ever compete again. I don't want to. I mean, I did it for 15 years and I loved it. It was a love-hate relationship. But, like you said, the end result, it was amazing to see. It's like, how did I do that? Well, you certainly realize that you have to have, heart and soul. And if you don't do it with heart and soul, you're not going to do it.
Right.
It's like you look back. It's like I look back now. I thought I'm glad I have photos to remind me that I actually looked like that, because I'm like, oh my goodness, how in the world did I do that? I must have been out of my damn mind. But I had a buddy of mine, Tom Platz is his name. I don't know if that rings a bell to you, but longtime pro in the industry. One of the things that he said was, when you're in bodybuilding, you have to be willing to walk in fire every time. It was a nice metaphor, I thought, because it seemed like it was true. You got to walk in fire every time you go to the gym. And when you think about that, and to be able to accomplish that, it's more than meets the eye.
Yeah, definitely.
And then on top of that, to most people that are weightlifting, there's a difference between weightlifting and weight training. Most people, especially in the beginning, they weightlift, and comparing that to weight training, because the idea and the goal, at least what I teach, is when you go into the gym, you want to make sure that every movement that you do from start to finish counts.
Right.
And yet, especially the people that are novices, I would say anywhere from 40 to 60% of what they're doing is to some degree a waste of energy, because you have to learn that craft. It certainly doesn't happen overnight, because I don't know about you, but I've had people over the years say, well, what's so hard about doing what you're doing? Because they don't understand, when they look at you doing something, because you get to a point where you start making it look easy, because you're starting to become a master in your craft, and they don't realize.
I hear that a lot, actually.
Right? Isn't that something? Yeah. Why? Why do I need you as a trainer? And it doesn't seem like it's that hard, And then, of course, you take it to that next step where you're actually competing. That's where it gets really crazy,
Right.
And to be able to have that discipline, I call it discipline to the nth degree. I even have that up on my gym. It's a hashtag, to the nth degree, and it stands for that, because to be able to to be under where your body is being tortured and muscles burning, and to be able to hang with that. I mean, how can most people do that? They can't.
Yeah, most people tap out.
They do tap out.
They feel a little burn. Oh no, this is too hard. and I'll come back to it. I need a break.
Yeah.
Where, you know, anybody who's wanting to get to the next level, knowing that it takes you going through that to improve, they'll push through. So yeah, there is a separation there for sure.
And the market with good trainers to be able to take somebody through that process, because in some cases, there are people that have come to me, I'm sure the same with you, they've never been inside of a gym and they've never lifted weight. I even had, this reminds me of a story. I've always been very mindful when I start new people after they do the first workout, and believe me, I'm very conservative when I'm walking people through their first workout. And when they left, I would usually call them the next day. How you doing? Just checking up on you. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
I had one client of mine, blew me away. They said, I did that. I called them the next day and they said, how are you doing? They go, oh my God, I ended up in ER last night. I'm thinking, what the hell? You know, how could that happen? You know, well, here's what I didn't take into consideration. This is early on when I was doing my business, personal trainer. They had never felt that soreness before. They didn't know what the hell that was. They thought they were hurt. Isn't that something? They took themselves to ER to find out, you know, if there was something broken.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But you know what? That was a very good lesson for me, because it's like you don't realize sometimes that when a person steps into your facility, they have never had that experience before. They've never felt soreness. And I'm thinking, well, hell, as an athlete, that's all I was used to.
Right, exactly.
But it's a good thing to remember as a personal trainer, because you just don't know how people are going to respond to exercise. Would you agree?
I always ask if you have a background in athletics, because that will tell me if you're used to kind of that push and a coach pushing you. And if they say no, then I know I'm dealing with probably a totally different mindset.
Well, yeah. It's really interesting. I mean, I almost got to the point where I almost prefer taking somebody like that, because it was a bigger challenge. The person that comes in with a mindset of an athlete, you almost have to hold them back. It's a whole different dynamic, where the other person's like, you know, look, you could do this. Believe me, you could go for the thing you're doing. You just have never done it before.
Right.
You know, so it's important that you don't overwhelm that person, because you can lose them, you know, in a heartbeat. That's for sure.
That's for sure.
Okay, so your off season. Now, what about when it comes to your pre-contesting? How many weeks do you give yourself before the show?
So when it came to that last year, because I had a little break of a few years between shows before 2018. So when I started my training in 2018, I pretty much didn't stop. I was never really in an off season through Olympia this past November. So there was no counting of weeks or anything. It was just you're on. Now this year, because I've got a little bit of a longer break, I'm kind of focusing on I'm experimenting a little bit, a few different goals for bringing up a couple body parts. So I'm focusing on heavier weightlifting. Mm-hmm. So in that, I'm eating a little bit more calories. So I'm not limiting calories, if you want to call it that right now. So there's no cut going on. But I definitely give myself at least 12 weeks, if not 16, when I start to cut calories back. Yeah.
You're saying that this year you want to add and lift heavier weight. Now, when you're doing that, I'm curious to know, how many reps are you doing when you're lifting heavier weight?
I keep that between 5 to 8 reps.
Okay. So what you're doing there is still, because some people would say, you know, there's still an ongoing debate whether or not to add muscle to the body, it's about lifting heavier or doing more reps. And the truth of the matter is, specifically, it's about doing more volume. And volume is what you're basically doing. 5 to 8 reps is still considered volume of training. Even 6 to 8 reps, or 6 reps on, I mean, we did reps as high as 100, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking, some people, when they're, you know, they think they're doing 3, 4 reps, is the best way, do that kind of low rep training is the best way to add muscle. And it's actually proven in physiology that when you're strength training like that or lifting heavier, your body responds in a very specific way that is specifically going to add strength before it adds muscle. Muscle is a secondary benefit. Whereas when you're doing more volume, which is what you're doing, just heavier volume, then the body is going to add muscle, and then the secondary benefit is strength. That's how the physiology works.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always been a debate about that. That's why I was just curious as to, so when you're lifting lighter weight, do you go through that? Like, for example, this time, are you going to stay with 5 to 8 reps the whole way through, or are you?
No. So my legs respond to weights in a way that is not complementary to being on stage as a figure competitor. They just grow.
Uh-huh.
So I will definitely not do that on my legs. I typically don't do weight training on my legs at all.
Wow.
When I'm in that 12-week countdown to the stage. So I use body weight for the most part, TRX. I do that at least 2-3 times a week. I'm running, I'm on the Stairmaster, and I may pick up a few dumbbells for like RDLs or something like that, but that's pretty much it. So this is a big difference for me is picking up some heavy weight versus almost no weight.
Yeah, I just love the differences when I'm talking to athletes. Everybody has such their own kind of way to get to the same result. It's really fascinating for me. I really do like that. I think it's pretty good. What is it that you mean TRX? Tell me about that. It's functional / foundations. What does TRX stand for?
Let me see. What does TRX stand for?
I'm asking you the question.
That's a great question. I took a TRX certification not too long ago, and it's absolutely not what you think. So now I'll have to look it up again because I've forgotten what that stands for.
Yeah, I'm looking at your certifications.
So yeah, the biggest thing with the TRX is using your core, using your and it's kind of a foundation of using a plank in every movement that you do and working against gravity with your own body weight. So I definitely have to be strong, of course, in the core. And then what I do when you're talking about those 100 reps, you will see 100 to 150 reps per exercise on every exercise we do. So it's just repetition on those TRX movements.
Sounds like it's a lot of body through space.
Yes,
Call that
absolutely.
Body through space. Okay, that clears that up. I like to learn stuff. I'm learning some. I know the kettlebells. What about the Bulgarian Bag level 2? Tell me about that.
So the Bulgarian Bag is basically, if you've never seen it, it looks like a sandbag. And what it was designed for was for wrestlers to challenge their grip and to be able to put body weight on their bodies, but in a different way than a dumbbell or a kettlebell, something that can move and kind of stay on your body as you're jumping, you're moving, you're twisting and doing other things without obviously hurting yourself. So I did several trainings. I went overseas a couple times to learn more about how this all works. And then it was basically, if you can imagine moving weight through space around your body, which was new. So you can spin it around, you can swing it through almost like a kettlebell, but it's a piece of leather. So that's filled with, sand, and it has straps and handles. So you can maneuver it around your body. So it's very interesting to learn to train that way because it's so different from a traditional dumbbell or a barbell. It's very, very different.
Sounds like it. Now, you said you went overseas. Exactly where did you go to learn this?
So initially I went to Sweden and I trained there with a guy named Olaf, and he did so many trainings for folks kind of all over with the kettlebell and the Bulgarian Bag. And then we went back again and met him in Amsterdam for another training and did kind of the level 2 of the kettlebells and the Bulgarian Bags. And then he also came over to the States a couple times and did some trainings in my facility.
I see. So he's a guy that's certifying people.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure you don't know this because you don't know me that well, but I actually spent time in Bulgaria. I trained with the national Bulgarian weightlifting team.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, with them as well as the Russians and the Czechoslovakians. I was there in, I don't know, this guy had to be like 80, I don't even know, 90, 89, 90, in through there. But I actually studied with the Bulgarians. They were very fascinating in their approach to weight training. They were
Yeah.
amazing. They were way ahead of everybody back
Yeah,
then.
for sure.
8 years ahead of the West here. And in fact, I wrote my first book. I called it Bulgarian Burst Training, and it was modified to bodybuilders instead of Olympic lifting, because obviously back then, I don't know how much it's changed now, but back then it was all about the Olympic lifter, because they were considered rock stars back in those days, because they got to
Hmm.
travel. You have to remember that in those days it was still like a socialistic, and they're just, the first time I went there, they were just coming out of communism. And so it was very different over there. And the way for them to be able to travel was to be a national on the Olympic team. I mean, it was you talk about motivation. Otherwise, they were trapped, in their own
Yeah.
countries. But some of my best information that I got was from Bulgaria. It's still relative to this day. So when I saw that, I just had to ask, where that came from. And then, so I wanted to ask you a question, because I find this really interesting. Now, with the way social media is, there are a lot of, the reason why I came back out of retirement was because I'd been in the industry for 13 or 14 years and wrote a lot of training courses and whatnot. And I got out of it, still in it, but just not as much as I was. But I started reading like Google, and all of a sudden there were these, I call them social media stars, these trainers. And I could tell by what I was reading and the way they were explaining certain things that they really didn't know what the hell they were talking about. It was kind of scary. And I even thought that they were kind of a danger to the industry. If they were doing what they were saying they were doing in these articles, it was kind of frightening.
Hmm.
And I just, so I wanted to come back, and I was known for talking straight to people in the industry, and I still am, about certain things. But when you got certified, for example, with ACE and some of these places, how extensive was that, and how qualified were you once you got certified like that?
So, as I mentioned before, I came up under a very experienced trainer. So,
Mhm.
I had a lot of experience even before I got certified with weight training, with nutrition, with pretty much everything you can think of as far as athletics goes for high schools, and then even dance. I had done 5 years of dancing.
Mhm.
So, I had a lot of experience before I started training, and then taking that ACE certification, which was a nice textbook size certification, kind of solidified what it was to put together a program, how to walk someone through that, how to progress them, and then, of course, making sure you knew the basics for the human body and movement kinesiology, the whole thing. So I think I had a good experience when it comes to that. I know a lot of folks, they will try something another trainer showed them how to do, and then they're a trainer. And that is
Yeah.
funny to me, but it is scary also, because even for like CrossFit, I get a lot of people coming to me saying, I went to CrossFit, I had a new trainer and I got hurt, and now I just want to lift like, traditional style. And
Yeah.
for me in my gym, make sure that all my trainers here can either at least show me a good workout with me, and understand the concepts that I will absolutely, as just as a baseline, require of everyone that works here.
Yeah.
And you have to meet those requirements before you can even think about applying for a job here. So I don't have a lot of trainers, because you have to know a little bit more than the basics. But I've personally had a great experience when it comes to that, and all the solid knowledge, and still can go back to any of my coaches and, ask questions if I'm not sure. But I've been doing this for 20 years now, so it definitely requires especially with like continuing education and just staying on top of the new trends.
Yeah.
You have to know what people are doing so
Yeah.
that you can understand it. And for me personally, I have to do the workouts that people are talking about and see what it feels like so I can relate to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really smart. You know, the best, I quote Einstein all the time and my dad, because Einstein said real knowledge is through experience, firsthand experience, you know? And I like that you're doing that kind of stuff, because I think too many times that doesn't happen. And this is where you get people injured. I mean, CrossFit is, I saw a documentary on them one time. It was actually the owner of CrossFit. They have the highest injuries in the industry, but they're making so much money at this thing that even if they're getting sued, it doesn't matter. I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, people are getting hurt with the CrossFit, and anyway, that's just another story. But your overall approach is solid. I mean, I think that if just by talking to you, coming to you would be a really smart thing to do if people were looking for a personal trainer. That's for sure. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. Where do you go from here with your bodybuilding? You won the Olympia, the International Olympia. You won the pro figure.
I did, yes.
Okay, so what's up? What's on your plate now? Where do you go from here? It sounds like you are winning at the very top of the game. What kind of plans do you have now? I know it seems to me that your business is your foundation.
Yes.
So, but as far as the sport is concerned, what's going to drive you now? I mean, you're full of motivation, but what's going to drive you in bodybuilding or in that industry?
Yeah, so I definitely, I mean, just the athlete and perfectionist that Alondra is, I definitely want to improve on what I brought last year.
Mm-hmm.
But, like I said, it's a moving carrot. There's always something that I can personally improve, and I'm my biggest critic. So when I got the pictures back from Olympia, I said, yes, Alondra, you won. That's awesome. But I still see a few things that you can improve on, be it the posing, be it, getting a little tighter with conditioning. There's always something that can be brought better. And of course, there will be girls on stage gunning for my place for next year. So I will be back. But in addition to that, there were so many great opportunities that came out of everything that we had go on last year with Generation Iron and Ironman Magazine. So I'm really looking forward to that, which also keeps me on it. So I've got to keep improving and being ready for those things as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think most people will not know this, is that no matter how good and how well you come into your show, you're always going to find something that needs improving. And, it's like, I from my personal experiences, I hope that you, at least for a moment, really pat yourself on the back and enjoy and really marvel at what you've done. Not to rest on your laurels, by no means, because I've seen your photos and you've made, I mean, obviously to be able to compete at that level, that Olympia was tough, man. There was some tough competition there. And to be able to compete at that level and do as well as you did, I mean, kudos to you. And at least give yourself a pat on your big shoulders, your wide shoulders, because you really deserve that.
Thank you so much.
You bet. And then what I would ask you is there anything that you would like to promote on the show? Because as I mentioned, I think that anybody that wants a solid personal trainer, because I can pick them out, Alondra, I should say, sorry about that. I can pick the good trainers out and the ones that are, not so good in about 3 or 4 minutes after I start talking to them. You're the real deal. And if anybody, would be looking for a personal trainer, they should be looking for somebody like you, and specifically you. That being said, is there anything that you'd like to promote on this show before we leave?
Sure. So absolutely. My gym is called The Inner Athlete. We're at 685 East 14th in San Leandro, California. We are a full-service gym, so we offer personal training one-on-one, tandem. We do smaller groups, semi-private training. We do group fitness classes, so we run boot camps. We do kickboxing classes. We have heavy bags hanging in the gym. We have an MMA jiu-jitsu fighter that actually runs those classes. He's awesome. We have outdoor boot camps that I run every Saturday, so we utilize all of the wonderful terrain that we have throughout the Bay Area. And with my exercise ADD, you'll never be bored. It definitely is a great community environment here, so it's family friendly. Everyone knows each other, but we are serious. We are definitely here for results and for getting you exactly what you're looking for in a training routine. Obviously, we have a competition team, so if you're interested in competing in bikini, figure, physique, we have angels. We have all of those categories that we offer as well. And we definitely want more folks to come in and see what we do because it's a great place to be. So yes, thank you so much.
Well said. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. And maybe, I don't know if I met you at the Olympia because I met so many people. Really good.
Yeah, my husband and my son did the pull-ups. My whole team was there doing pull-ups.
Okay, all right. I think I remember your husband now that you mentioned that. There was a big group of you guys.
Yes,
Okay.
that was my group.
Okay.
The crazy loud folks that were, making a big commotion in the stands. They were with me.
Well, that's actually good because, we didn't put that pull-up bar was there by design because we knew it would attract attention. And it did. We had a lot of people over there. So, again, thanks for coming on. Maybe one of these days we'll cross paths again.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you again for coming on.
All right, have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the Serious Growth Podcast. For more episodes like the one you just listened to, subscribe to us on your mobile podcast app and leave us a review. If you'd like to reach out, you can find us online at seriousgrowth.com. Until next time, train smart and train hard.